Assessment is a key component of learning because it asks students to demonstrate their understanding of a topic. It evaluates whether the educational goals and standards of a lesson are being met. According to the Glossary of Education Reform, the term assessment refers to the wide variety of methods or tools that educators use to evaluate, measure, and document the academic readiness, learning progress, skill acquisition, or educational needs of the students. We will explore and take an in-depth analysis of how assessments are used to evaluate students at the elementary level using school-based assessments. Specifically, the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment in the Caribbean countries. This documentary will further examine poor urban areas that play a large role in Caribbean countries, especially in Grenada. The Chief Education Officer in the Caribbean, Lou Ann Gilchrist, has said that there is monitoring in the schools, and we have to formalize the monitoring in the schools and the standardization of the quality of the tests administered within the schools. An issue with school-based assessments is that they are graded by the teacher. Gilchrist also mentioned that in some cases, teachers can be too lenient or too harsh in their grading, and the ministry will work on standardizing school tests and grading. Gilchrist urged teachers to be faithful to the marking schemes sent by the CXC. We have to be fair to the students. We have to give the students credit for their work. The CPEA was introduced in 2012, and the following video clip with Lou Ann Gilchrist details how it began and how it will be implemented.
Today marked the first day of a 3-day workshop hosted by the Ministry of Education to train education officers, principals, lecturers, and other persons responsible for the education of the nation's children. According to Chief Education Officer Lou Ann Gilchrist, one of the areas the training would be focused on is the implementation of the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment Program, CPEA, by the Caribbean Examination Council, which is expected to replace the Common Entrance exam in 2014. Speaking at the opening of the workshop today, Gilchrist said the CPEA exam has already received positive reviews from countries that have already implemented it.
Grenada, I think last year, went full speed ahead and presented all of their grade 6 students for the CPEA with resounding success. Testimonials were heard from those persons, those students, parents, teachers, and government officials, attesting to the improvements that were seen in student performance, student attitude, students' engagement.
She also stated that the implementation of the CPEA may call for more work in terms of accountability on the part of teachers.
Of course, teachers in the beginning did say that the implementation of the CPEA brought with it additional work, but here additional work in the sense that they were called to greater accountability, because the record keeping, as we all know with CXC, is very stringent and rigorous. If you're missing 1 mark for one child anywhere, the officers in Barbados will call you, they will email you and tell you that they want that score, So we have to be very prudent here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We have to make sure that our education officers or head teachers or teachers and parents are fully engaged with the CPEA.
Meanwhile, Gilchrist took the opportunity to outline some of the details of the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment CPEA exam, noting that there will be no change in the syllabus, but in the assessment and record keeping of the students' work.
The CPEA is an assessment framework. It is no different from what we teachers should have been doing in the classroom in any case. It will not bring about a change in curriculum, a change in syllabi. The content which the teachers will be presenting to the students would remain the same as it is now. There will be no change. What will be different will be the way the assessments are structured, the frequency with which students are assessed, and the rigorous correctness with which records are kept, accurate records are kept.
Here in the United States, the majority of public schools are driven by national laws and testing programs, whereas the countries in the Caribbean utilize school based assessments or SBAs. There has been acceptance of SBAs in the Caribbean, but there are still concerns about this form of examination. This video documentary will address the concerns and success of SBAs and offer a solution to the challenges that the schools might face.
There are three main reasons for including SBA in the HKDSE and on top of having ordinary examinations. The first of those is that it improves the validity of the assessment process. It's becoming increasingly recognised in education systems around the world that the kind of educational skills you can get at in an ordinary examination are only a partial record of the achievement you want to assess for students. Sometimes there are practical aspects of some subjects, for example, laboratory work in the sciences, field work in geography, oral work in languages, group work in some subjects. But a more significant aspect which is occurring more and more in SBA is individual project work, investigations carried out by students, issue-based investigations, where students have to plan their own work, control their own time commitment to doing the work, carry out investigative researches, and prepare some final product over an extended time period. These are significant pieces of work which incorporate a higher level of cognitive skills than you can usually get at in an exam setting, and they do provide valuable evidence of student achievement in the learning. The second advantage is that it improves the reliability of assessment. Now, reliability is often interpreted as being just making sure different markers would give the same mark to a piece of student work, but there are other aspects to reliability which is to do with student variability. If you only assess a student in a single assessment event like an examination, you may catch them on a good day or a bad day and not always get a fair assessment of their general level of achievement. So by extending the assessment activities over a significant timescale through the use of SBA, you get a more general appreciation of what a student's achievements are. The third area of improvement is in the washback effect of assessment onto classroom activities, in terms of an improved teacher contribution to assessment and improved student attitude to the assessment. In ordinary examinations, those are assessment of learning rather than for learning. They're assessment processes which are very detached from the learning process. In SBA, the learning and the assessment are more interactive and integrated in that they work together as you go through an SBA activity. The teacher is quite legitimately able to give feedback to the student as they go through the process and give some general level of guidance, nothing too specific, because the work submitted must still be the student's own work, but the teacher can give some levels of support and help and feedback as you go through. So it's a much stronger interaction between the teaching, learning and the assessment processes, and the assessment makes a major contribution to the learning. It isn't just assessment at the end of learning.
The data shows that for all CPEA participating schools, there was a reduction in the non mastery rate in the grade 4 literacy test. The lowest reduction of 3% was observed in the schools where the CPEA program was not systematically implemented. Additionally, it was evident that in schools where the book reports and writing portfolio activities designed specifically to improve language literacies were emphasized, the reduction in the percentage of non mastery was greater, and the increase in percentage of mastery was huge and significant. There is evidence to show that the use of book reports, writing portfolios, journals, and other associated activities were contributing factors in the number of pupils demonstrating literacy at grade 4 level.
As students prepare for the Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment, CPA, the Ministry of Education has rolled out new measures as it relates to the number of students now being able to get their first school of choice. Deputy Chief Education Officer Michelle George explains this new development.
So we decided that the top 300 this year from 2017 will be given the opportunity to have their first choice. Top 300 candidates will be placed according to merit. In other words, they will be placed based on performance. So once you would have placed in the first 300 spots, you will be assigned to the school of your choice.
George says after these 300 students are given their school of choice, hundreds of other students have to be catered for, and as a result, they will be placed based on the scheme of zoning. According to George, the move to allow more students to receive their school of preference would limit the number of transfers.
So now we have decided that the grounds for transfer will be strictly humanitarian, based on humanitarian grounds, okay? So in other words now, if a parent wants to request a transfer, the parents has to make sure that that child or the situation that is happening there is within the grounds that the ministry would have specified, okay? So for instance, you're looking at change of residency of the parents after submission of what you call a placement form, because that's one of the steps. The parents, they have to submit what you call a placement form early.
In order to receive a transfer for CPA students, George outlined some of the requirements that must be met.
However, there are certain steps that persons will have to follow. The first one, what we will do, a week before the release of CPA examination, we're going to upload what we call the transfer forms. We're going to upload it electronically, all right? On the Ministry of Education's website, we're also going to circulate that form to all schools, both primary, secondary schools, so that persons can have access to the form. And once that has been done, thereafter, that information, of course, the parents will have to complete the form, and it has to be fully completed. Okay, it must be fully completed. We give them a deadline. The deadline would be the end of June, the 30th of June.
Ekisha Felix for GBN News.
The Caribbean Primary Exit Assessment is an assessment of the literacies required by only pupils exiting the primary school system. Most teachers who teach in the Caribbean primary schools firmly believe that testing the pupils is a basic condition for effective learning. A problem is that under this belief, teachers pay attention to their pupils' summative performance on the grade 4 literacy test. Parents also become anxious about their children's performance, and pupils' emotional well-being and test scores ebb and flow haphazardly. The data shows that for all CPEA participating schools, there was a reduction in the non-mastery rate in the grade 4 literacy test. The lowest reduction of 3% was observed in the schools where the CPEA program was not systematically implemented. Additionally, it was evident that in schools where the book reports and writing portfolio activities designed specifically to improve language literacies were emphasized, the reduction in the percentage of non-mastery was greater, and the increase in percentage of mastery was huge and significant. There is evidence to show that the use of book reports, writing portfolios, journals, and other associated activities were contributing factors in the number of pupils demonstrating literacy at grade 4 level. The CPEA assesses the student as a whole. Instead of only one yearly assessment to measure their growth, the CPEA involves the teacher in the assessment, and uses project-based learning, cooperative learning activities, as well as providing the students with a clear grasp of the learning process. Our goal is to promote global education through learning about school-based assessments in the Caribbean, like the Caribbean Primary Exit Exam. The U.S. government would benefit from researching testing practices in the Caribbean, and our hope is that they will consider using various forms of assessment rather than one form to measure student achievement. Data on CPEAs should reach teachers and schools so they can learn how the usage of assessments in other countries impacts student learning. The members of the communities have the power to advocate for policymakers to adopt global assessment to ensure that students all across the world have equal access to the education that they deserve.